Let's be real for a second. There is one part of intimacy in relationships that many women quietly feel unsure about, even if they don't say it out loud. Not because they don't care, but because they overthink it, they hold back, and they worry about doing it right. But here's the truth most people miss. The real power in intimacy is never about performance, it's about presence. It's about how you show up, how comfortable you are in your own energy, and how deeply you can connect with your partner without losing yourself in self-doubt. Because when a woman is confident, calm, and fully in the moment, everything changes. The connection feels different, stronger, more real, and it stays in his mind, not because of one action, but because of how it felt to be around her. And this is where most people get it wrong. They think it's about rushing or trying to impress. But the real shift happens when you slow everything down, when you stop trying to do and start focusing on being. The way you look at him, the way you move closer, the way you create small pauses that build natural tension. It's not about copying anything you've seen or trying to become someone else. It's about owning your natural energy in a way that feels effortless. And when that happens, the entire dynamic shifts. He doesn't just feel noticed, he feels chosen, he feels drawn in without even understanding why. Now let's talk about something most people underestimate completely: pacing and presence. The biggest mistake in intimacy is rushing through moments that are meant to be felt. When you slow down, everything becomes more intense without you even trying. Your energy becomes the focus, not speed, not action, energy. Even small gestures start to carry meaning when they are done with intention. A pause, a glance, a soft touch on his arm, or a moment where you simply hold eye contact a little longer than usual. These are the things that build anticipation in a natural way. Not forced, not exaggerated, just real connection unfolding in real time. And the more relaxed you are in those moments, the more he responds to you. Because people don't just react to what you do, they react to how you feel while you're doing it. If you are grounded, present, and fully comfortable, that becomes the atmosphere he steps into. And suddenly, you are not chasing connection anymore. You are creating it without effort. That is where true attraction deepens, not in pressure, but in ease. Another powerful shift happens when you stop thinking in terms of actions and start thinking in terms of interaction. It's not one-sided, it's a rhythm between two people. The way you respond to his energy, the way you notice subtle changes in expression, breathing, or body language, all of that becomes part of the connection. When you are aware without overthinking, something interesting happens. You start to naturally sync with each other. And that creates a feeling of emotional closeness that is far stronger than anything physical alone. This is also where confidence plays a huge role, because confidence is not about being bold or loud. It's about being steady. It's about not second-guessing yourself in the moment. When you trust yourself, your presence becomes magnetic. You don't need to overdo anything. You don't need to perform. You just need to stay connected to the moment. And that alone makes everything feel more meaningful, more intense, and more memorable for both people involved. Because at the end of the day, what people remember most is not technique. It's how deeply they felt seen, wanted, and emotionally understood in your presence. And here's the final truth most people never talk about. The most powerful kind of intimacy is not about control or strategy. It's about emotional safety mixed with attraction. When someone feels comfortable with you, but also deeply drawn to you, that combination creates something unforgettable. It's the balance between softness and confidence, between patience and desire, between presence and intention. You don't have to rush it, you don't have to force it. In fact, the less you force, the stronger it becomes, because real connection doesn't come from trying too hard. It comes from being real enough that the other person naturally leans in. And when that happens, everything else follows on its own. And that's when something shifts. Because once he starts leaning in, once he's fully focused on you, that's where the energy changes. You don't rush it. You don't chase anything. You simply switch your presence. From soft and playful to calm, grounded, and fully in control of yourself. That contrast is what hits him the hardest. Not pressure, not noise, just certainty. You look at him like you already understand the moment better than he does. And suddenly, he's not just reacting anymore. He's following your energy without even realizing it. That's the real turning point. Because now, it's not about effort. It's about influence. the way you pause, the way you move, the way you hold yourself like you're completely unbothered but deeply present at the same time. That combination is what keeps him locked in. And if you've ever noticed a man going quiet, focusing more, watching you closely, it's because he's picking up on that shift. Something unspoken takes over the space between you. And that's where real tension builds. Not forced, not loud, just felt. Stay there a little longer. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let the moment breathe. Because the longer you stay calm, the more he leans into you mentally. And yes, this is where everything starts to feel different. He's no longer thinking in pieces. He's thinking about you as a whole experience. Stay with that energy. That's the line he won't forget. Now let's talk about presence and eye contact, because this is where most people underestimate everything. Eye contact is not just looking, it's communication without words. When you hold someone's gaze with calm confidence, you're not asking for validation, you're creating connection. A steady look, even for a few seconds longer than normal, changes the entire emotional tone of the moment. It tells him you are fully aware, fully present, and not uncertain about yourself. And when you break that gaze with a small smile or a subtle shift in expression, it creates curiosity. It makes him think about what you're thinking. That's where the pull happens. Not through force, but through mystery. And the more natural you are with it, the stronger it becomes. You don't need to exaggerate anything. You just need to be steady. That steadiness is what makes you memorable, because most people rush through moments like this. But when you don't, when you actually stay present, it feels different to him. He feels seen, but also slightly unsettled in the best way. Like he can't fully predict you. And that unpredictability is what keeps attraction alive. It's not about playing games. It's about not over-explaining yourself, letting silence do some of the work, letting your presence speak louder than effort ever could. That's what creates depth. And then there's the contrast. This is where everything becomes more intense without you doing more. You don't stay one note. You don't stay predictable. You move between softness and firmness in your energy. Sometimes warm, sometimes distant, sometimes playful, sometimes still. That shift is what keeps attention locked, because consistency without variation becomes familiar, but contrast creates emotion, and emotion creates memory. The key is not to act, but to naturally move with your comfort. When you feel like pulling back slightly, you do it. When you feel like leaning in, you do that too. That honesty in your energy is what makes it powerful. Because he can feel it's not performed, it's real. And real always lands deeper than anything rehearsed. In those moments, less becomes more. A look says more than words. A pause says more than explanation. And your calm confidence becomes the anchor of the entire interaction. That's what makes someone remember you long after the moment has passed. Finally, understand this. The strongest kind of connection is never about control over someone else. It's about control over yourself, your emotions, your presence, your timing. When you are grounded in yourself, everything around you responds differently. You don't need to push. You don't need to force reactions. You simply create space where connection naturally happens. And when a man feels that kind of presence, steady, calm, unshakable, yet deeply aware, it stays with him, not because of one moment, but because of how it felt to be in it with you. And this is where everything shifts again, because now it's not just about presence or eye contact, it's about your voice. The way you speak becomes another layer of connection, another form of influence, something that reaches deeper than words alone. When you learn to use your voice with calm control, it changes the emotional tone of the entire moment. Not loud, not forced, just intentional. A soft, steady tone that carries meaning without needing to explain itself. That's what makes it powerful, because people don't just hear words, they feel the energy behind them. And when your voice is grounded, confident, and slightly slower than normal, it naturally draws attention. It makes him focus without even realizing why. And the more present you are in that moment, the more impact every word carries. You don't need to say much. In fact, the less you say, the more each word matters. That's where real emotional tension builds, not through volume, but through timing, through pause, through intention. Stay in that space a little longer. Don't rush to fill silence. Let your presence do part of the work. Because when you combine stillness with voice, something changes in the atmosphere between you. It becomes more focused, more charged, more personal. Now let's talk about what you actually say, because this is where most people overthink it. It's not about saying something perfect. It's about saying something real in the right moment. Something that feels natural but carries weight. It could be a simple expression of admiration. It could be something playful, or something emotionally honest that shows you are fully in the moment. The key is timing, not forcing it. Waiting for that natural pause when attention is already high, when energy is already focused, when both of you are fully present. That's when a few simple words can change everything. Not because of the words themselves, but because of the moment they land in. When your voice matches the emotional intensity of the space, it creates memory, it makes the moment stick, and it gives him something to replay in his mind later. Not just what happened, but how it felt to be there with you. That's what creates lasting impact, not repetition, not performance, but emotional precision, the ability to say less, but mean more. And when you pair that with calm confidence, it becomes even stronger, because now your words are not just communication, they become influence. They shape the mood instead of reacting to it. And here's the deeper layer most people miss. Your voice reflects your self-belief. When you speak with certainty, even softly, it shows that you are comfortable taking space, that you are not second-guessing yourself, that you are fully present in what you feel, and that is naturally attractive. Not because you are trying to impress, but because you are not trying too hard at all. You are simply being. And that kind of energy is rare. It stands out. It stays in memory. It creates curiosity, because people don't forget how you made them feel when you were fully yourself. And when your voice, your expressions, and your presence all align, it creates a kind of emotional clarity in the interaction. Nothing feels chaotic or uncertain. Everything feels intentional, even in silence. That is where connection deepens without effort. That is where attraction becomes something more stable, more grounded, more real. And finally, understand this. The strongest impression you can leave is not built in a single moment of intensity, but in how present you are throughout the entire experience. Your calmness, your confidence, your ability to stay grounded while emotions rise around you. That is what stays with someone. Not one phrase, not one gesture, but the overall feeling of being with you. When you combine voice, presence, timing, and emotional awareness, you create something unforgettable. Not because you tried to, but because you were fully there, and that is the real secret. You don't chase impact, you create it naturally by how you show up. And when you do that, people don't just remember you, they feel you long after the moment has passed. And this is where everything intensifies even more, because once he is fully locked into the moment, once his attention is completely on you, something subtle but powerful begins to shift. You don't rush forward. You don't try to escalate anything too quickly. Instead, you change your energy. You become calmer, more grounded, more in control of yourself than ever before. And that contrast is what hits him the hardest, because he can feel it. The shift from playful warmth to quiet authority, from light teasing to steady presence. It doesn't need explanation. It just happens. And suddenly, he is not leading the emotional space anymore. He is reacting to yours. That's the turning point most people never notice. The moment where silence starts to speak louder than words, where your presence alone becomes the direction everything follows. Stay there. Don't break it. Don't fill it. Let the tension build naturally, because the longer you remain steady, the more his focus deepens, and the more he starts to feel pulled into your energy without even trying. Now understand this clearly, because this is where most people underestimate the entire dynamic. Attraction is not built in constant action, it is built in rhythm, in contrast, in shifts of energy that feel natural but powerful. When you are soft, be fully soft. When you are calm, be fully calm. And when you decide to take control of the moment, do it without hesitation. That contrast is what creates emotional intensity. Not chaos, but variation. Not confusion, but depth. And the key is timing. You don't force anything. You respond to the moment. You allow yourself to feel it first, and then you express it outwardly. That is what makes it real. That is what makes it magnetic, because nothing is more attractive than someone who is fully present and unafraid to express that presence without apology. And then there is your voice. This is where everything becomes even more powerful, because your voice is not just sound. It is direction. It is tone. It is emotional energy being translated into words. When you slow your speech slightly, when you lower your intensity just enough to make someone lean in, you change the entire atmosphere. It becomes more intimate, more focused, more personal. Not because you are trying to control it, but because you are fully in it. And what you say matters less than how you say it. A simple sentence, spoken with calm certainty, carries more weight than anything overly complicated or exaggerated. Because people don't remember perfection, they remember presence. So when you speak, don't rush. Pause when it feels right. Let silence sit between your words. Let him lean into what you are saying instead of you chasing to fill space. That space is where anticipation lives. That is where emotional tension builds naturally. And when you finally do speak, let it be intentional. Let it come from a place of confidence, not uncertainty. Something simple, something real, something that reflects exactly what you are feeling in that moment without overthinking it. Because authenticity always lands deeper than performance ever could. And here's the final layer that brings everything together. Your power is not in doing more. It is in being fully present, in controlling your own emotional rhythm, in staying grounded, even when the energy between you rises. When you do that, everything changes. You are no longer reacting. You are shaping the experience through your presence alone. And that is what leaves a lasting imprint, not intensity alone, not words alone, but the feeling of being with someone who is fully there, fully aware, and fully unshaken in their own energy. That is what he remembers. That is what stays long after the moment is gone, and now everything reaches a deeper level. Because once the emotional intensity is fully built, once the connection between you is undeniable, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop trying to guide the moment at all, and instead you become the moment. Fully present, fully grounded, fully aware of the effect your energy has without needing to force anything. That shift is what changes everything. Because it's no longer about doing more. It's about being more stable, more centered, more intentional in how you hold yourself. And when that happens, the entire dynamic naturally reorganizes around you. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence sets the tone. This is where contrast becomes your greatest tool. Not loud contrast, not dramatic change, but controlled variation in your energy. One moment you are soft, open, and relaxed. The next, you are calm, steady, and slightly more distant. Then you return again, warm and engaging. This rhythm keeps attention locked in without effort, because predictability makes people comfortable, but contrast makes them pay attention. And when that contrast feels natural, not forced, it becomes magnetic. He starts to read your energy more carefully. He starts noticing the smallest shifts, not because you told him to, but because your presence has become something he doesn't want to miss. And then your voice becomes the anchor of everything. Not just words, but tone. Not just sentences, but timing. When you slow down your speech, when you allow pauses to exist without rushing to fill them, you create space for emotional tension to grow naturally. That space is powerful. It makes everything feel more intimate, more focused, more intentional. Because silence is not empty in those moments. It is active. It builds anticipation. It draws attention inward. And when you finally speak, even something simple carries more weight than anything rushed or over-explained. Your voice becomes something he follows without realizing it. Not because you are trying to lead, but because you are fully grounded in yourself. Let your words land with purpose. Let your pauses breathe. Let your energy do part of the communication for you. That is where true presence lives. Not in constant talking, not in over-explaining, but in selective expression. When you choose to speak, it matters. When you choose to stay silent, it matters even more. That balance creates emotional depth. And emotional depth is what makes moments unforgettable, because people don't just remember what was said. They remember how it felt to be in that space with you. And here's the final layer that ties everything together. True impact doesn't come from intensity alone. It comes from control over your own emotional rhythm. Staying calm when things feel charged. Staying steady when attention is high. Staying fully yourself without slipping into performance. That is what creates lasting impression. Not effort, not exaggeration, but presence that does not break under emotional weight. When you hold yourself like that, everything around you responds differently. You are no longer reacting to the moment. You are shaping it simply by how you exist within it. And that is what stays with someone long after the moment ends. Not the details, but the feeling. And if you really understand this, you realize something most people completely miss. The power is never in the action itself. It is in the state you bring into the action, the internal calm, the unshakable presence, the way you stay centered even when emotions are rising around you. That is what creates impact. Not what you do with your hands, not what you say word for word, but the energy behind it. Because energy always speaks first, before language, before intention, before explanation. People feel it immediately. And once they feel it, they start responding to it without consciously knowing why. This is where emotional control becomes your strongest advantage. Not control over another person, but control over your own rhythm, your own reactions, your own pacing. When you are not rushing to fill silence, when you are not forcing connection, when you are not trying to prove anything, your presence becomes naturally more powerful. Because stillness has weight, calm has authority, and confidence that does not seek validation is impossible to ignore. He doesn't just see you differently in those moments. He experiences you differently, as someone who is not easily moved, not easily distracted, not easily shaken. And then something very important starts happening. Attention deepens, not because you are demanding it, but because you are no longer scattering it. You are focused, intentional, grounded. Every look carries more meaning. Every pause feels more deliberate. Every small shift in your expression becomes noticeable. That is what creates psychological pull, not pressure, not chase, but focus. And focus naturally creates emotional intensity, because now he is not just engaging with what you are doing, he is engaging with how you are being. Your voice at this stage becomes even more powerful when it is used sparingly. Not constant talking, not over-explaining, but selective expression. When you speak less, your words gain weight. When you slow down your tone, your presence becomes more immersive. When you pause before responding, you create space where anticipation builds on its own. And in that space, imagination takes over. He starts filling in the silence with thought, with curiosity, with emotional projection. And that is where connection becomes deeper than surface interaction. Because what really stays in someone's mind is not repetition. It is contrast, warmth followed by stillness, softness followed by calm authority, presence followed by space. That rhythm creates emotional imprint. It makes the interaction feel alive instead of predictable. And anything that feels alive naturally becomes memorable. You are no longer just part of a moment. You become the emotional reference point of it. And this is the final truth in all of this. The most powerful version of attraction is not created by trying harder. It is created by being more aligned with yourself, more aware, more intentional, more present in how you carry your energy. When you stop performing and start embodying, everything changes. People don't just react to you, they remember you. Not because of effort, but because of impact. And that impact comes from something simple but rare. A person who is fully there, fully grounded, and completely unafraid to take up space without apology. VidIQ